Hi, hey Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. This is a rambling Russ. First thing I got to tell you is that my last video about the Icra jig templating, I'm kind of have to hold that back a little bit. It's become a little more complicated than I thought it would. Not to do what I want to do, but to be able to relate it to you so that you can understand the method to my madness. Otherwise, you're going to get lost. And I've realized that since I started trying to get ready for the next video. So bear with me. I'm going to get things set up the way they should be. And when I get it all figured out 100% to be able to relate it to you, I'll bring it back to you so you can see how to template your own videos. Also, when I did that, what I didn't really explain in detail is why would you even want a varied finger joint? Well, let's talk about that for a second. I've seen out there people do varied dovetail joints. Icra does it. So does Lay dovetail machine. You can set those joints up anywhere you want, and you can vary them out as to their what width they are. But doing it on the Icra jig takes a certain way of doing it too. But more importantly, you have to kind of think of why you would want to do it, which means that, first off, if I'm doing something I want to make it aesthetic, I can actually make a joint with, let's say like in this part of this joint here where it's 2.5 inches wide. Well, if I wanted to, I could very easily be kind of fancy about it and actually put a 1/4 inch finger right in the middle of it. And I can do that by setting up a template to allow that to be in there during this joint cutting as well, and be able to do both the positive and the negative fingers using the template, and be able to do that so that aesthetically it looks better. You know, so you want to sometimes make your joints vary for the way it looks. The other thing is one of the most common ways to make a box, if you've ever done box making, a lot of times the classic way of doing it is you take your 4 pieces, the sides, and you do your setup for your joinery for your joints. Then you take and you cut a groove in the bottom and the inside edges of the board and at the top. And then you put panels in the top and the back and the bottom, so that when you fold everything together and glue it up, you have those panels inside there and you let it glue up. Then you have this box that you can't open because it's all one piece. And so then you take it over to your table saw and you cut it all the way around to split the lid off from the main box. And it's a classic way of making a box. And it works real well, except with finger joints, you're going to end up with a finger that is off. If all your fingers are evenly spaced when you make them, you're going to lose that 1/8 inch kerf of that saw blade somewhere in that configuration. So if you have the capability to set up your template to add 1/8 of an inch to this joint or this joint on the edge, then when you cut that down there between the two, then all your fingers will be exactly the same size when you're done. So having the ability to vary your finger joints is actually kind of handy thing to have. And up to now on YouTube, I've never seen anybody talk about how to do varied finger joints other than with the Lay machine, the dovetail machine, which also you can do finger joints on it. And you know, I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend $400 or more just so I can vary my finger joints and make these line up when I get done making the box. So with the Icra jig, I can show you how you can add 1/8 of an inch to that one joint right there, so that when you cut it on your table saw, they all come out exactly the same. When you close the lid on it, they all look evenly matched. And that's the idea behind being able to template out varied space joints. And like I said, the other thing is that sometimes you want to do it, you vary your joint sizes for aesthetic reasons. So it's a good handy thing to be able to do. And that's why I've embarked on this idea of taking and being able to do vary width box joints. So anyway, if you have any questions about this subject, just leave them in the comments. But that's kind of where I'm at and why I'm doing this to begin with. You know me, I like to do things outside the box, and doing varied spaced finger joints is something I've never seen anybody do out there other than with the lathe machine. And I think you can do that without being so unaffordable. Now, one thing that makes this possible with the Icra jig, I should mention too, is, if you remember on my table saw, I have a dedicated table saw that I put a 1/4 inch dado stack in. And that is set up to be exactly 0.25 thousandths of an inch. And that is because you want your blade to be exactly incremental to 1/32 of an inch, because your Icra jig is incremental on 1/32 of an inch. And if your saw blade kerf that you're cutting is not incremental to 1/32 of an inch, you can throw that off as you move around between your positive and your negative fingers on your finger joint. Positive, negative finger joints. You don't know what that is? Let me explain it to you real quick. This is one of my own terms. But if you look at this joint right here, this box joint. Well, let's use this one. This is even one here. 1 inch, 1.5 inch, 1 inch, 1.5, and 1 inch. So this finger here is what I call a positive finger. I call this one a negative finger, and I call this one a positive, that a negative, and that a positive. If I was looking at the mating board to this, then I would call this one the positive on that board, and this would be the negative on that board. So a positive, negative finger on a finger joint, if you hear me say that, that's what I'm talking about. It's referring to that board exactly, and whether it's the finger that sticks out or the negative where the other finger joins into. So positive, negative finger joints. Better write that down so you don't forget it, because otherwise you're going to say, what the heck is he talking about? So anyway, Rambling Russ, there's a reason for it. So, the other thing I want to talk about real quick is what I'm also going to be doing in the shop. Since I haven't really done any videos since I did that other one, I've been still kind of working on some other things. One of them is on my drum sander over there. I want to make a circle sanding jig for my, when I make circles, and I want to be able to sand them down exactly on there. So I'm putting together a nice little sanding jig that will work on a oscillating drum sander. And you'll see that when I get it done. It's probably going to be kind of similar to the one that's on my bandsaw, if you watch that jig, how I made that. So stay tuned. That's one of the things I'm working on. The other thing I did is I read a tip the other day, and I believe it was in Shop Notes again. And I still, to this day, I do not understand how Shop Notes can slip these articles in there after I bought that magazine like that. I've never seen that article before, and I couldn't believe it when I read it. I thought, how did they get that in there? I know I didn't miss it before. Anyway, they were talking about marking pens, whiteout pens, for whiting out your mistakes. And he was talking about how he uses it on dark woods in his shop. And I thought, that's actually a pretty good idea. Maybe I should try that. So I bought that. I'll let you know how it goes. But like this piece of wood, it's a very dark wood. If I draw a pencil mark on there, it's very hard to see, as you can guess. But there I drew a couple of marks, and I was kind of playing with it a little bit. But you can get a pretty good mark out of it, so maybe that might be a handy thing to have. You don't get that super fine line that you can get from a pencil line or a knife line, of course. So it depends on what you're doing. But especially if you're rough cutting, this thing would probably be awesome on some of the darker woods to be able to rough mark out that wood to cut it. And I think this will be really much easier than a regular pencil mark. So we'll find out. When I do, I'll let you know. I just don't know how they keep getting these articles and slip them in there like that. Speaking of which, the other thing I did is when I read that day, I was actually in a doctor's office waiting for something. And I had this magazine. I have them all on my little tablet, which I carry with me. And I was reading this one in particular. And this one is issue 69. And on page 22, I saw something that I've decided that you don't know this yet, but we actually want to build this. Yeah, you do. You just don't know it yet, but I'm going to show you why you do. So this is the article. It's about a bending jig. It's where you can take and scroll bend flat metal or round metal pieces on here. And you can move the dowels around to get different shapes and different diameters. It has little circles that you cut out and you have so that you can bend bigger circles too. So it make it really easy to take metal and do simple projects like handles and shelf brackets and things like that. You'll be able to make them real easily with this jig. But also, the next article after this one, which is on page 26, is a bending press. Here. And basically it's two pieces of angle iron that squeeze into each other on these two metal rods, and has a spring in between. So as you tighten it down, it holds the pressure, and as you back it off, it'll release. And so that you can bend metal down to a 90-degree bend. And it's very interesting articles, both of these. And they also show you some of the tricks of how to use it and what you can use it for. So it helps to get you off to a good start to using it. And then if you're like me, you start thinking outside the box, I have a feeling that's going to take us a long way before we're done. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff that comes out of that. So I'm going to build those pretty quickly here, and hopefully you'll like it too once I get done. So stay tuned. That's one of the other things I'm working on. The last thing I've been thinking about very seriously is that when I went to Harbor Freight the other day, I bought 2 of these. And I've had this idea in my head for a long time to make a bench vise that I can mount on my bench anywhere I want, and it's going to be using these hand screw clamps for the bases of that vise. And when I get it done, I'll show it to you. I think you'll like that. So I'm working on a new bench vise, as if I really need another bench vise, right? How many do I have now? Quite a few. So, but stay tuned. We're also going to do that. So that's kind of where I'm at. If you have any comments about any of this, or you have an idea or suggestion of something you'd like to see how it can be done, leave it in the comments. If I can figure it out, I'll make it into a video. So there are some of my videos that have turned into, I've gotten the ideas from all you guys that are watching them. And a good example of that is the video that I have out there that it has the most views of all my videos out there, and it's way ahead of the rest, is on how I made my own panel saw cutting deal, where I mounted it on my my overhead garage door. And that has turned out to be a very big view. There's like over 4,000 views on it. Compared to most of my others, that's a lot. But it has a lot of views. Anyway, and it keeps growing every month. So I don't know why or how that one has been so popular. And it's a 2-parter, which is weird because most of the time 2-parters aren't as popular. But that one seems to be doing quite well. But that idea came from somebody that asked me a question that had he was going to be moving into a very small garage, like slightly smaller than a 1-car garage. And he couldn't figure out how in the world he could ever cut full sheets of plywood in there. And I said, well, let me think about that. And I put together a quick little video, the one before that panel saw video, of how you can cut full sheets of plywood in a small shop. And it was actually a very interesting video about how to set it up on the side of your workbench. You don't put it on top, you just lean things up to it. And I put that video together and helped him out. But it was amazing how that one took off. And so I decided to do the next one, and that's what I did. So that came from you guys, quite honestly. A couple of my others are the same way. The ideas come from you. So if you have a good idea out there or wondering about something, don't be afraid to mention it. If you like this video, please say so. Most importantly, though, come back again because, as you can see, nowhere near done here. Thanks, and we'll see you again very soon.